So thanks for attending. Um, we've obviously got our annual retreat coming up in November and wanted to have a bit more of a inclusive ECR session built into that. So what we're doing today is trying to get you to think about how you can create a narrative based on the research, the work that you're doing, how that can come across, and what you might want to achieve from that, basically. So it might be useful to have a brief little summary about me. So I'm Ellie King. If you haven't met me before, then you'll either know Sammy or you'll know Neve, and we're doing very similar roles across the 3 different cities in GroundsWell. We try to focus on kind of science communication, events, anything that kind of increases the reach and the impact of the work across GroundsWell. But my background was as an impact officer for 3 years at the University of Liverpool. So what I had to do was kind of understand the research that had been happening over the last 10 years within the Department of Maths, the Department of Geography, and some computer science as well, and kind of pull out narratives to create impact case studies for the research that was being done across those departments. So that was a lot of fun. It was, it was interesting trying to go back and pull out what was important from different projects across the departments and think about, okay, well, how can we sell this as a story? What is the narrative? What were people trying to achieve and what actually was changed as a result of this research? And so, yeah, I've had quite a lot of experience in taking huge ideas and putting them down to a very small word count and making them a bit more interesting than what they might have started off as. My role currently is research impact lead for GroundsWell. So I'm looking at trying to understand what work everyone's doing and how can it maybe join up together better? How can we get the most out of what we're all doing? How can that be most relevant to communities and how can it make the most impact in GroundsWell's research going forwards? So what we want to start off thinking today about is what are your science communication objectives? So with your research, with anything that you might want to creatively represent, what do you actually want to achieve with that? Do you want to see a behavior change in people? Do you want to affect policy and have things changed around? Do you want to see actual health policy change, planning policy change, anything out there that you want to be cited in? Do you want to just get people enthused about a subject? Is there something that nobody's talking about that you want to get across, that you want to raise the public awareness of? Do you want to have an attitude change rather than a behavior change, but the way people are thinking about? Do you want to see that work differently? Do we want to find out what public opinion is? Is it something that we're not really aware of? Do we want to raise aspirations in science? There's a lot of obviously STEM engagement going on right now in the universities. And obviously from a GroundsWell focus, we quite often think about, do you want to co-produce your work? What's going to make sense for the people that you're working with? We don't want to just have outputs that make sense from an academic standpoint, but what will actually, when you're fed back to everyone who are co-producing with, what will make the most sense and be most useful for them? So then formats. So for the ECR Creative Showcase in the annual retreat, we said that any format is acceptable. So when you're thinking about what format you might want to choose, there's going to be quite a few different considerations there. So the first kind of idea of a format that I thought I'd bring today was comics. So we've had some training in Liverpool with a guy who has written some science comics before, and they're really great for communicating complex information effectively. So it's that combination of words and pictures can convey so much more than, you know, a lot of text on a page. I've got a couple of examples on the next page as well about some different comics. So we've got some kind of thinking about climate change in the future. We've got some thinking about bacteria, and it can just be so much more effective to convey what your key message is in a real simple, quick way, especially when we are doing something where there's lots of people in short presentations and you want to get your message across clearly. Something like this could be quite effective. Another way that we can do that is through infographics. So if the information that you have might be quite sensitive or you might need to convey something that's really important, you don't want to be changing the text into more of an informal speech bubble kind of format, then these can be the way to go. So it can be really quite short, like the one on the left with the signs of stroke with just acronyms and the key information, or you can get a bit more detail, such as the breast cancer one on the right, where you've got some more facts and it's more about conveying that information over to the people who might need it. There's also board games. This is the way people can use it. So we've got like a cytosis cell biology game here. There's a dementia board game that has been used in Liverpool, and we're running a kind of data detectives board game event at the end of the month. So that's one way that we can engage younger audiences, or maybe I've seen it done quite well at kind of science festivals where people have a little bit more time to sit and engage with what you're doing. It'll help you kind of convey what your message is about. There's also kind of kids programs for distilling down information, and more kind of creative posters that can be eye-catching and drawing people in. Overall, you kind of want to think about, well, is the audience that I'm communicating with, do I need to be more accessible? Do I need to be more engaging than usual? What is the time frame that I have to convey my message? And what are the objectives that we started off with? Another reason to kind of think about creatively representing your research might be that it can be more scalable and adaptable. So we have an exhibition currently up at a photography gallery in Liverpool about our Innovation Fund projects. So this initially started off thinking about, well, actually, as GroundsWell, we'd like some photographs about what's going on. Then when we thought about it, we were like, well, it could be a bigger celebration of that. We could reach more voices and kind of think about what we want to convey and explain what we're doing and try and connect with some other community members around Liverpool. And so when you start off with something that's more brief, it's just pictures and words, then you can then scale and adapt it to kind of larger science communication events going forward. So hopefully it kind of gives like a brief overview, and it gives you a taste of different kind of methods that you could be using going forwards. And these are kind of some of the objectives that we mentioned before. So if you start thinking about what your objectives might be for the ECR showcase, the next step might then be, well, what makes something a story? How can I get a narrative for the showcase session that I want to host? Most people say it's a beginning, a middle, and an end. That tends to focus on around a beginning where you set up a world and some characters, and then, oh, something's not right, there's a bit of jeopardy, there's a problem, and then we're moving into the kind of the therefore, so how are you addressing the problem and what's being changed? When we're relating that to research, that could quite easily tie in with a classical research paper format. So your introduction is kind of the world and some characters. Your methods and the results are kind of, oh, well, something's not right, there's a problem, and we need to do something to fix it. And then your discussion and conclusion is going into, okay, well, this is what we need to change, and this is what's going to go forwards. It doesn't have to be as complicated as that. So when we're thinking about creating a narrative that is easily accessible to people, one of the examples that often quite comes up is this kind of ABT method. So just thinking, okay, and we're going to have a setting and, but there's going to be some kind of conflict, and the therefore is the resolution. So if you've kind of got your research topic or what part of your research you're thinking about for the ECR showcase, this is probably a good place to start. So that's going to be what we're going to be focusing on for our first kind of task. So the and, but, and therefore. Sometimes as academics, I think we can tend to write overly long sentences. So if you find that you're having a lot of ands in the paragraph, you might be being a bit too descriptive. If you find that you're having a lot of howevers in your paragraphs, sometimes it might be that things might be a little bit too confusing. So if we're trying to distill down a clear message or a clear narrative to what we're doing, then it might not be the most effective way to do that. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is for the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes, kind of think about, okay, well, my research topic, how can I get that into one paragraph, and how can I explain it with an and, but, and therefore? So that's going to be kind of the start of what we're going to be working on today and thinking about narratives. I put a couple of examples there as well if you want to kind of read through them and have a think about that, and then we'll come back and share them with the group in about 5 minutes. But if you've finished, I'm going to copy this link into the chat for you now as well. I've got a Miro board set up where we can start entering those kind of ABTs into. Okay, so hopefully kind of doing that exercise kind of help you distill the huge amount of research that you're working on currently into something that's a bit more manageable, maybe more like an elevator pitch, something that you could say to somebody easily if you're meeting them quickly, you know, this is what my research is about. So what we'd like to move on to now is kind of this second task, which is, okay, well, if you had an even shorter time, the area that you work in, how would you categorize the importance of it? So there's this quote here that nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. So if you were to come up with something for your area of research that would relate to this kind of sentence, what would it be? It might not apply that well, but I think most of them you can come up with something. So I tend to think nothing in impact makes sense except in the light of why you started doing research in the first place. And sometimes we kind of say nothing in science communication makes sense in light of the so what. So what, so why, so what have you done that for? So what was your aim in doing this? So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that one. There are some places on the Miro board right at the bottom that you can write that one in. I think it's the fourth one down. And then I think with these kind of sentences, often we can get stuck in using the terminology, the glossary, the kind of lexicon that is often found in the research that we're working in. I think if we can find that key that kind of opens up what we're talking about, then it can help for conveying a clearer message across to people when we're talking about the importance of our work. So we've got two more tasks ahead of us that hopefully are going to be a little bit less academic in this section. So when we're kind of thinking about things creatively, if we go back to kind of that comic strip that we started off with at the start, it might be useful now that we've kind of thought about, okay, what's our key message and what does our research make? What kind of world does our research sit in and live in? What is the key to explaining that? What I'd like you to do now is to kind of think about a story you could tell, a character you could have, and a one sentence bio about their challenge. So somebody who exists in your kind of research world or relates to your research world that could explain what you're working on and then have a bio to do with that. So I know I haven't explained that quite clearly. So I've got I've got a couple of examples here. So we could have an adorable polar bear who's come to teach urbanites the dangers of climate change. An ecologist who'd rather stop deforestation than make up a comic character. An alien from the future with an ominous warning about Drosophila. A first generation student who wants to explain to their parents why butterflies are so important. So there are a couple of ideas. If you want to kind of think about the research world you work in, what is it? A fun story you can tell. So you need a character and a one sentence bio so you kind of know what they're all about based on that. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes on this because it might be a little bit harder. And there should be another section on the Miro board there as well that you can enter that in because then we're going to flip it over once we've completed this one. They're looking great. I've enjoyed reading them coming through. So for the final task that I'm going to ask you to do today is to pick one of those characters that isn't yours and to try and draw them. So look, I know that some people might not want to feel that comfortable drawing, but if you want to, you can either use the drawing tools on Miro board themselves, you can draw on a pen and paper and then upload it, or you can kind of collage some things in Paint or Photoshop, whichever you're most used to, from the inside to kind of bring together what you think that character might look like. Most people who can draw the same one, that's fine. But I'd just say if you could maybe add an emoji next to the one that you're planning on drawing, so we've got an idea that not everyone's going to do the same one. Be able to do that. If you come over to this kind of tools, you can search for emojis, or if you want to upload, then you can kind of search for the upload part for the bar if you want to take a photograph of something that you're drawing too. And yeah, let's see what everybody comes up with and if they look like what you had imagined in your head for your character. Well, I'm hoping anyway, these exercises kind of giving you the confidence to see, okay, you can represent something that seems so complex and you dedicate so many hours to in simple and silly ways that actually are able to get the messages across that they're trying to. I quite like this Yeti a monster, or is it that's the other look monster? It looks great though. Okay, so I hope that those kind of exercises have been useful in getting you to think about your research in a different way and in how we might be able to kind of get the message across. So if we bring that back to kind of the ECR showcase now, so I've put a little bit of info up there. So we're asking for kind of expressions of interest if you want to take part by October the 30th. And by expression of interest, what we mean is we want to know kind of like a rough title or topic that you're going to be working on and what format you might want it to be in. So this is mainly because if we've got some people doing videos, I've heard there might be some interpretive dance coming from Belfast, or we've got people who, want to do something that's a bit more interactive, then we're going to just try and group those together so we don't have to move the room around too much when we're doing that. So it'd be kind of useful to know ahead of time what that's going to be. There's a Google form link. I'll send that around again with the email following this session. We're asking people to do that. What we're expecting is that you're going to have kind of 3 minutes each to do a presentation of whatever format you prefer. And you're going to be in groups of 3. So 3 people present, and then there'll be kind of like a minute follow-up time for questions. We're then going to be kind of asking the room to score everyone, and then that's going to be anonymous. And at the Wednesday evening session, we're going to have some awards, which are £100 Amazon for first place, £50 for second place, and £25 for third place. So may as well put something in because you never know. The deadline for materials will be Friday the 8th of November. So when you have to have everything in, mainly because we're going to have to put everything together in order and get in touch with the AV team who are working in the spine where the event is. Some practical things you might want to know is that there is a stage, so that'll be great for the dancing. The room itself, you can have roving mics or you can be mic'd up. We just need to know ahead of time if you wanted to be mic'd up for anything in particular. There are 4 screens in the room, so everything can be presented across the room. If you're worried about people not being able to see, that shouldn't be a problem. And the whole day is going to be recorded as well. So if it's something that you might want to reuse or you might want to use in future presentations, let me know, and we can kind of work on how that's being recorded. We're also going to have a photographer as well in the room. So if you want some headshots or some photographs, something that's a bit more interactive that you could use, then let me know about that too. So that's pretty much everything I have to present. So I'll stop the sharing now. But what I'd be interested in knowing is there anything that you'd like to ask some questions about, or do you have any ideas that you might want to workshop now? I've got some time. So yeah, please let me know. Oh yeah, kind of, go ahead.
Do my fast question. Sorry, this is a bit silly. So in terms of, I kind of like the idea of that of potentially a comic. But in terms of presenting that, are you presenting the comic, whatever kind of idea you might come up with, or are you actually talking about it in a more serious way, within those 3 minutes? What are you actually presenting in that point?
So it can be totally up to you. If you just want to have the comic strip up for people to read, we could just do that without you speaking at all if you didn't want to. Or if you wanted to do like a bit of an introduction or where you think it might be useful or, what the intended audience is, ahead of that, you're welcome to do that too. But yeah, it's totally up to you. It's going to be quite relaxed. So yeah, don't worry too
Perfect.
much about it if you want to make it like that.
That's good. Thank you.
Regan?
Yeah, thanks for the training today. I have a question. So it's 3 minutes, and I'm thinking of maybe performing a poem. So do I have to take up the whole 3 minutes, the allotted 3 minutes? Because I don't know, it might be a bit longer. No, I mean it might be a bit shorter.
Shorter.
Not, yeah, I don't want to talk for 3 minutes, I think.
Yeah, that would be quite a long poem.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he doesn't have to take up the whole 3 minutes. If it's going to end up being shorter, that's fine. And maybe just add that in the notes on the form,
Okay.
so we know. But it's the final session on the first day. So if it ends up running a little bit shorter, then the day ends up shorter, so it's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd also had a question earlier on, I can't remember who from, but there was some people who wanted to present together and then have kind of an introduction across the three. So if people do want to work in teams and they want to maybe connect things up, then that's also fine. So just drop me an email and I can make sure that's organized when we kind of go through the running order. So yeah, like I mentioned, if we've got the expressions of interest by the end of this month, I'll be able to kind of send out a running order where you might come and how that might work following that date. So probably the first week of November that I'll send that out. Okay, great. In the meantime, if you have any other questions about it or any other ideas that you want to run by me or formats that no one's mentioned today that you'd still like to go with, then yeah, let me know. That'd be great to hear about.
Awesome. Sally, that was super helpful.
Okay, thanks. Well, thanks for your time today. And you can get a little half an hour back since we've had less as well.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye.